It's a meeting of Brazil, Russia, India, and China. BRIC. These are the major non-European industrial powers anchored by the world's only superpower, China. The rest of the countries of South America, Africa, and Asia are more than willing to align with them as their trade continues to shift away from the U.S. and Europe. At their summit in Russia this week, they refused to allow the U.S. to even observe the proceedings. The major focus of this meeting was how they will proceed with the elimination of the U.S. dollar as the international reserve currency. In the past 6 months, these countries have moved aggressively toward trade among themselves without the use of dollars. Now that this has been set in motion, there's almost no way to stop it. The only thing holding it back is China's reluctance to change. Once they are fully committed, either by choice or by cascading events, the avalanche will be unstoppable. This will make the dollar worthless for international trade and trigger either hyperinflation or crushing deflation or alternating waves of both here at home. The assumption is that the standard of living of Americans would drop 20% overnight because that is the percentage of our economy that is made up by trade deficit. It's not likely that it would stop there, since we are not only consumers, that we not only consume imports, but imports are completely integrated into every aspect of our economy. Everything from car parts to surgical supplies are imported, and many things that are linchpins of our economy are exclusively imported. The turmoil that this could produce has no large-scale precedent. With almost no Americans having any sense of ownership in our society, the reaction will be a feeling of hopelessness and an every-man-for-himself mentality. The crazies on the right have been priming themselves for this sort of apocalyptic collapse for 40 years, and will have no doubt who is to blame. Those that don't know who to blame will get a fair and balanced list on Fox News. Watch your back. Prairie 2. Woo! Spooky! Go to his website, prairie2.com. And then this, from Chris Hedges, who is one of my favorite scary writers. I don't think there's ever been anything Chris Hedges has ever written that hasn't just caused icy fingers up and down my spine. He's a smart guy. And as Bob says, he lays it out about as clearly as anyone can. Bob writes, soon this country is going to be one great, big, real-time disaster movie, and we're all extras. You know, the crowd of people who get stomped into paste under Godzilla's foot. Those guys. Okay, go ahead and giggle, Malloy. Chris Hedges writes, this week marks the end of the dollar's reign as the world's reserve currency. It marks the start of a terrible period of economic and political decline in the United States, and it signals the last gasp of the American imperium. That's over. It's not coming back. And what is to come will be very, very painful. Barack Obama and the criminal class on Wall Street, aided by a corporate media that continues to peddle fatuous gossip and trash talk as news, while we endure the greatest economic crisis in our history, may have fooled us, but the rest of the world knows we are bankrupt. And these nations are damned if they are going to continue to prop up an inflated dollar and sustain the massive federal budget deficits, swollen to over $2 trillion, which fund America's imperial expansion in Eurasia and our system of casino capitalism. They have us by the throat. They're about to squeeze. There are meetings being held Monday and Tuesday in Yekaterinburg, Russia, formerly Sverdlovsk, among Chinese President Hu Jintao, Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, and other top officials of the Six Nations Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The United States, which asked to attend, was denied admittance. Watch what happens there carefully. The gathering is, in the words of economist Michael Hudson, the most important meeting of the 21st century so far. It is the first formal step by our major trading partners to replace the dollar as the world's reserve currency. If they succeed, The dollar will dramatically plummet in value. The cost of imports, including oil, will skyrocket. Interest rates will climb, and jobs will hemorrhage at a rate that will make the last few months look like boom times. State and federal services will be reduced or shut down for lack of funds. The United States will begin to resemble the Weimar Republic or Zimbabwe. President Obama, endowed by many with the qualities of a savior, will suddenly look pitiful, inept, and weak. And the rage that has kindled a handful of shootings and hate crimes in the past few weeks will engulf vast segments of a disenfranchised and bewildered working and middle class. The people of this class will demand vengeance, radical change, order, and moral renewal, which an array of proto-fascists from the Christian right to the goons who disseminate hate talk on Fox News will assure the country they will impose. I called Michael Hudson, who has an article in Monday's Financial Times called The Yekaterinburg Turning Point, De-Dollarization and the Ending of America's Financial Military Hegemony. Hudson writes, the meeting in Yekaterinburg may become known not only as the death place of the czars, but of the American empire as well. His article is worth reading, along with John Lanchester's disturbing expose of the world's banking system titled It's Finished, which appeared in the May 28th issue of the London Review of Books. Hudson told me, Chris writes, this means the end of the dollar. It means China, Russia, India, Pakistan, Iran are forming an official financial and military area to get America out of Eurasia. The balance of payments deficit is mainly military in nature. Half of America's discretionary spending is military. The deficit ends up in the hands of foreign banks, central banks. They don't have any choice but to recycle the money to buy U.S. government debt. The Asian countries have been financing their own military encirclement. They have been forced to accept dollars that have no chance of being repaid. They are paying for America's military aggression against them. They want to get rid of this. End quote. China, as Michael Hudson points out, has already struck bilateral trade deals with Brazil and Malaysia to denominate their trade in China's yuan rather than the dollar, pound, or euro. Russia promises to begin trading in the ruble and local currencies. The governor of China's central bank has openly called for the abandonment of the dollar as reserve currency, suggesting in its place the use of the International Monetary Fund's so-called special drawing rights. What the new system will be remains unclear, but the flight from the dollar has clearly begun. The goal, in the words of the Russian president, is to build a, quote, multipolar world order, end quote, which will break the economic and, by extension, military domination by the United States. China is frantically spending its dollar reserves to buy factories and property around the globe so it can unload U.S. currency. Hudson added, quote, China is trying to get rid of all the dollars they can in a trash for resources deal. They will give the dollars to countries willing to sell off the resources since America refuses to sell any of its high-tech industries, even Unocal, to the yellow peril. It realizes these dollars are going to be worthless pretty quickly, end quote. The architects of this new global exchange realize that if they break the dollar, they also break America's military domination. Our military spending cannot be sustained without this cycle of heavy borrowing. The official U.S. defense budget for fiscal year 2008 is $623 billion before we add on things like nuclear research. The next closest national military budget is China's at $65 billion, 1/10 of that, according to the Central Intelligence Agency. There are three categories of the balance of payment deficits. America imports more than it exports. This is trade. Wall Street and American corporations buy up foreign companies. This is capital movement. The third and most important balance of payment deficit for the past 50 years has been Pentagon spending abroad. It is primarily military spending that has been responsible for the balance of payments deficit for the last 50 years.